You must be the Anjin.
What does that mean?
It means pilot.
Shogun is in many ways an odd show. It has all these plot lines going at once, many of which don't really go anywhere, and it has a main character who never really does anything, largely because for much of the series he's either a prisoner or a pawn. It wasn't until the show was nearly over that I finally realized John Blackthorne, aka the Anjin, isn't so much the protagonist as he is the witness. He's our window into this world. Japan circa 1600 was completely insulated, except for the Portuguese, I guess, so all the customs, traditions, rituals, clothing, language, power structure, they're just as alien to him as they are to someone like me. Yet despite all those differences, the basic story here is still instantly recognizable. People are people, no matter where you go, and wherever there's people, there's power. Here there's 5 lords all sharing power, so conflict is inevitable, and it comes in the form of Toranaga, who the other lords think has become too powerful. So they want to shut him down, but that ain't gonna be easy, because Toranaga's been around for a long time and he knows how the game is played, and because he's being ganged up on for reasons that seem unfair to us, and because he's aligned with our point of view character, albeit for pretty opaque reasons, we root for him to succeed despite not knowing how he can. That's a good premise, and it's made better by the stakes being high for everyone. Whether highborn, lowborn, or in between, feudal Japan was a dangerous place, and to reflect that, Shogun is a pretty violent show, especially in the beginning. In the very first episode, this poor English guy gets executed in the worst way for no good reason. A random villager gets beheaded when he makes the sign of the cross towards the Anjin, and this other guy has to commit seppuku. If you don't know what that means, don't worry, you will by the end of the show. If things weren't bad enough for this guy, he also has to end his bloodline, which his wife isn't exactly thrilled about. As to what crime could possibly justify such an unspeakably horrific punishment, he said the wrong thing at work. So yeah, this is a violent place, and much of that violence Shogun is exceptional at presenting. Not just the violence itself, but the tension that goes with it, which at times is off the chart. To examine why, I want to focus on these 2 scenes that I think of as the centerpieces of the show. While they'd probably work pretty well on their own, they work so much better within the context of the larger story, because a lot of unseen groundwork went into making them that you can really only appreciate in retrospect. The build-up to the first centerpiece goes like this. After Toranaga is called out by the ruling lords, most importantly his nemesis Ishido, he essentially becomes an unofficial hostage of Osaka Castle. When his wife and a bunch of other followers are granted permission to leave the castle, Toranaga, with a little help from the Anjin, uses this as an opportunity to sneak away, which sets up the main conflict that endures for the rest of the series. Toranaga can either return to Osaka and surrender, or he can face the other lords in battle where he'll be vastly outnumbered. Despite these odds, the majority of Toranaga's captains are eager for him to fight. They know that if he surrenders, they'll be committing seppuku right alongside him, and they'd much prefer to go out swinging. But Toranaga, after various setbacks, announces that a destructive war he's bound to lose anyway isn't worth it, so he's giving up, and despite his captains urging him to fight back, he won't change his mind. Then in one final bid to shake him out of his apathy, his highest-ranking general Hiromatsu gives him this ultimatum. It's a shocking announcement that seems to come out of nowhere, but again, the show has actually been building up to this, you just don't realize it. So here's my question for you. How do you build up to something big in a story without giving away what you're doing? What Shogun does is establish a trend that starts with this guy that we met back in the first episode. This sequence is super dark, but it serves an important purpose. We learn a lot from it. We learn that once you say seppuku, there's no going back. The only thing that can stop you at that point is if someone above you, like Toranaga, won't allow it, because you actually need permission to do this. However, as we next learn, Toranaga won't stop you just because it seems like he should. This guy was defending Toranaga, but as Mariko later explains,
the husband had insulted Ishido-sama, and something had to be done in order to prevent bloodshed.
Lastly, note how we don't actually see the seppukuing here, we just know that it happened. Step 2 in our trend occurs in this flashback of Toranaga commanding troops as a child, and he's good at it. He somehow won this battle at an age when most of us are mastering the fine art of Uno, and in the aftermath of his victory, guess what the opposing general has to do? But before he does, he asks Toranaga to be his second. in case you didn't know what that means, which is pretty embarrassing for you. A second is someone who waits for you to disembowel yourself and then chops your head off.
Jesus.
I did warn you this is a violent show, but again, it's violence with a purpose. So what do we learn from this? Well, we learn that Toranaga has been in the game for a long time. We also learn about the second, which is important, and again, note the presentation. Before, we were introduced to the concept of seppuku but didn't actually witness it. Here we see the beginning of this incredibly gruesome practice, which means, should we encounter a third seppuku session, our brains have been subtly primed to see more than we've seen the first 2 times. That is sophisticated storytelling, and it brings us back to the scene in question. Hiromatsu is thrown down his ultimatum. Either Toranaga fights back, or he can find himself a new general. Despite this being a shocking announcement, we're more ready for it than we think. We know that once you say seppuku, you have to go through with it. We know the only person who can stop you is someone who outranks you, and the only person who outranks Hiromatsu is Toranaga. We also know that Toranaga won't stop you just because it seems like the right thing to do. Lastly, we know that seppuku takes teamwork. You need a second. So who does Hiromatsu call over to be his second? His son, Buntaro, who's about as badass as it gets. Not to be outdone, Buntaro tells his father that once he seconds him, he's gonna seppuku himself, which nearly starts the whole process all over again. Fortunately, the father outranks his son and says, which again reinforces how devoted Toranaga's followers are. Now, I can't speak for you here, but I fully expected Toranaga to stop this. It seemed too unjust not to, even compared to the first guy, which seemed pretty unjust as well, especially the bloodline part. But at least here, Toranaga had a strategic reason not to intervene. Ishido had him over a barrel. Toranaga couldn't afford to show anything less than absolute respect. But Hiromatsu? He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't accidentally insult anyone. There's nothing to be gained from his death. And on top of that, he's your friend, dude. He's been loyal to you his whole life. He was there on that day when you seconded the general you defeated as a child. He even joked that you couldn't hack the guy's head off in one blow. Which apparently is what passed for humor back in feudal Japan. But none of that seems to matter to Toranaga. He's not budging. The tension keeps growing. I'm so far on the edge of my seat I'm about to fall off it, and yet I'm still convinced that this will be stopped. Even if Toranaga doesn't stop it himself, then something else will. The village will come under attack, or someone will burst the door with an urgent message, and in the commotion the whole seppuku thing will fizzle out. Except that's not happening either. When this guy yelled out, "Toranaga-sama! I was like, yeah, he gets it, but Toranaga just sits there until finally, right when the point of no return is about to be crossed, we cross it. I was not ready for this. At least I didn't think I was. I couldn't believe that Toranaga was so selfish and stubborn and heartless. However, once I'd calmed down, I had to admit, from a narrative standpoint, this was brilliant. Talk about establishing a trend. The first seppuku was implied, the second was half seen, and the third spared little detail. And it wasn't just violence for the sake of violence, it had a huge impact on the story. Until now, I thought the show was going to be about Toranaga figuring out a way to fight back against these incredible odds, and the engine somehow helping. But if he's gonna let his oldest friend and staunchest ally murder himself while he just sits there, then I guess he's not bluffing, which means my expectations were wrong. This of course begs the question, what is the show going to be about? Well, it's not till the very end of the episode that we finally learn the truth. This was all a ruse. God, yeah! To make it seem to the big shots back in Osaka that our guy really had thrown in the towel. But he hasn't. Instead, he's gearing up for a fight, which is what we expected all along. You know what? I feel no shame in admitting that I fell for this hook, line, and sinker.
You got me.
Best of all, the story is far from over. Even though we've been hoodwinked by this gut-wrenching scene, now that we know the truth, nothing's really changed. Toranaga may have lulled his opponents into a false sense of security, but they're still mostly aligned against him. Ishido still wants him dead, which just brings us back to our original question of how he's going to get out of this. We get something of an answer to that when he sends the excellent character Mariko back to Osaka. Clearly, these two are up to something. But I had no idea what, despite my curiosity, which is a sure sign of good writing. After exchanging some pleasantries with Ishido and the other lords, Mariko surprises them by saying she's leaving the next day and she's taking Toranaga's wife and baby mama with her, who have been under the same unofficial house arrest that Toranaga was before he snuck away. And they're not the only ones. A lot of important families are stuck being honored guests at Osaka Castle, whether they like it or not.
Lord Ono's family. Everyone in the castle is now a hostage to Ishido-sama.
And this is a big part of Ishido's strategy. He figures if he just keeps acquiring pieces, he'll eventually win, but Toranaga is determined to use this against him. That's why Mariko, despite knowing she won't be allowed to leave, still marches right to the front door with Toranaga's family in tow. This leads to some pretty intense fighting, during which all her guards are killed. But since guards don't qualify as real people, nobody cares, and it doesn't seem like this accomplished much. But then Mariko busts out the naginata and goes full Crouching Tiger herself. While none of Ishido's guards dare harm her because she's too important, they have no choice but to physically restrain her, which gives Mariko cause to say she's been unjustly held against her will, and in protest of such ill treatment, you'll never guess what she's going to do. Once again, despite our surprise, we're ready for this. We know the rules. We know that once you say the magic word, there's no going back. We know the only person who can stop you is the Lord, and for Mariko, that's Toranaga, not Ishido, who despite his powers suddenly finds himself between a rock and a hard place. Either he lets Mariko go, which means he'll have to let all his other unofficial hostages go, or he lets Mariko seppuku herself, which will loudly confirm to everyone that he's just a brutal dictator. Either way, it's going to cost him. You gotta hand it to Toranaga. This is some Sun Tzu level subdue your enemy without fighting shit, and he pulled it off from a position of weakness. Of course, in order for his plan to work, the person at its heart has to be willing to go through with it, otherwise Ishido could just call their bluff. Fortunately, Mariko is about as hardcore as it gets. Because of a somewhat convoluted backstory involving her father, she's had a death wish for years, but despite her unquestioned badassity, she does have one weakness. Thanks to those damn Portuguese, she is a Catholic. And Catholics are not cool when it comes to ending yourself. However, thanks to these earlier scenes, we know that seppuku comes with a Catholic-friendly loophole. It's not you, but your second who strikes the fatal blow. Yet when Mariko asks one of the other lords who's also Catholic to second her, Ishido won't allow it. Which means if she goes through with this on her own, she will not be getting into heaven. Does that mean Ishido has successfully defended himself? Not really. Mariko isn't about to let a little eternal damnation stop her from having her revenge, which means the ritual we're now so familiar with begins again. And this time, the tension is even greater. As harrowing as the scene with Hiromatsu was, at least he was an old man. But Mariko is young, and she's in love with the engine. Maybe. It's complicated. She's married to an asshole. She's got the whole death wish thing. Who knows what Blackthorn's long-term plans are. But I didn't care. I still wanted them to wind up together. And if preventing that wasn't bad enough, Mariko truly believes she's about to consign her soul to hell, which is agonizing to witness. But then, in one of the weirdest, most self-conflicted acts of heroism I've ever seen, the engine steps up and kind of saves the day by offering to be Mariko's second.
I will do it. Hell is no place I haven't already known.
Jesus.
Could they have possibly jammed more drama into this one scene? I don't know, but I do know that beheading someone you love after they disembowel themselves in order to save them from going to hell is pretty goddamn romantic. And with the engine at the ready, Mariko is ready. And I was also ready to seppuku my television. Which I seriously might have done if she actually did this. Thankfully, at the last second, Ishido appears and gives Mariko a signed permission slip to leave. Seriously, I have been in car accidents that have given me less whiplash than this show. And similar to the Hiromatsu scene, this was absolutely brilliant. And it works so much better because of everything that came before. If it wasn't for Hiromatsu, I wouldn't have been as worried that Mariko would actually go through with this. But seeing as how I felt the same way about him and he did go through with it, I couldn't help but fear Mariko would do the same thing. So whereas Hiromatsu surprised me by completing the trend, Mariko surprised me by breaking it. And that is why I think the violence violence of Shogun hits so hard. It's not just there for shock value, or as something to distract us as the real story is happening. The violence is the story. Its use or lack thereof is a necessary component of this intriguing tale that involves interesting characters and that I really enjoyed despite it not being perfect. Again, it has plot lines that go nowhere, the pacing drags a bit in the middle, the ending is kind of anticlimactic, and despite my praise, I'm not even sure if this scene with Hiromatsu makes sense, like, logically. But you know what? Good storytelling overcomes a lot, which is why I still give Shogun my enthusiastic stamp of approval.
Thank you, but I've already bathed.
Oh, in the prison?
No, in the village.
But that was some time ago.
What, two baths in a week? What, do you want me to catch the flux?